there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia Season 6 review. And today we're going to talk about the latest episode to drop, episode 21, The Lovely Lady Nagant, which follows up from Deku's initial clash with Lady Nagant, and gives us a bit of her backstory against the backdrop of a pretty epic battle, and the introduction of another quirk for Deku. And before we go any further, I would like to say that I have read the manga, and I'm aware of any relevant future plot points and details, but for the purpose of these reviews, I really prefer to approach things from an anime-only perspective, so that anime-only fans can watch along and join in too. And so with all that being said, there's nothing else for it but to jump into the episode. And so we start off the episode with another look at All Might just after he was attacked as Lady Nagant made her move on Deku. His car is able to survive a full-on blast from a grenade, and you know what, fair enough. The dude probably has a Batmobile equivalent car. Anyway, he realizes that these villains are trying to kill him, before he's confronted by two random, no-name, low-tier villains who try to impale him through the windscreen of his car, and he has to jump out of it to avoid this fate. And I gotta wonder, how the hell is his car enduring a grenade blast with the windscreen intact, and yet these two metal poles from this random loser are able to pierce it? I'm not really sure that makes much sense to me, but okay. Anyway, he jumps out of the car, which was going very fast, and he just brushes it off like it was nothing. Okay. I know he gave up his quirk, but he has to have some sort of residual toughness then, right? Because my god, the dude's just leaping out of speeding vehicles and standing up like it didn't hurt at all. Normal people break bones doing shit like that, and he's meant to be especially fragile, isn't he? But yeah, these two low tiers, they don't stand a chance, and simply with his threatening aura and a powerful speech, All Might intimidates them into standing down. And I mean, he comes across as such a badass here, and whilst it would have been fun to see him whoop them as Small Might, this is almost better in a way, because it goes to show what a legacy All Might has to these people. That even without a quirk anymore, these villains who grew up with this guy on TV are scared shitless of what he can do to them, powers or not, just from his expression, just from his tone of voice. And I also loved how they kept showing off the bond between him and Deku and what he actually means to him. I really love the big dad energy that All Might just oozes. Eat your heart out, Deku's real dad. You've been replaced. The intro then plays and we get the episode title screen before we head right back into the main event, the showdown between Deku and Lady Nagant. And before we go any further with that, I just want to acknowledge that it's really nice to have a fight like this. The Shigaraki battle was awesome, but it was mostly just a slugfest. Here we get tactical Deku making his return. He's making plans and using a strategy that's more than just him smashing over and over again. Reminds me a bit of the Overhaul and the Gentle Criminal fights, where Deku had to work to analyze the opponent and think of the winning strategy. Also, fighting in a cityscape in the rain at night? A classic. Really feels like it's right off the page of a comic book. Anyway, back to the fight. We have a really cool Spider-Man-esque sequence of Deku swinging around like he's in Into the Spider-Verse, trying to get the drop on Lady Nagant. And I really love this part. Like I said, very much felt like it was straight from Into the Spider-Verse. And the animation was just really dynamic and interesting. But anyway, since Lady Nagant seems to be a bit of a tough customer, she's able to get the drop on Deku again and again, and is hitting him with crazy curved shots, based on technique alone. Because, as they said in the previous episode, homing, that's not part of her quirk. Which, honestly, it's getting a bit ridiculous. How the hell is she predicting where he's going to be when she can't even see him? She's curving around buildings. But regardless, I do really love a competent and skilled villain, so she's rocketed to the top of my list of favourites. And it's also nice to see that even at this power level, Deku still struggles, and he still has to work for his victories. He doesn't just curb stomp everybody. And at the same time, the villains don't necessarily get stronger, but they're just different. Because physically, she has no chance against him. But with this added mobility quirk, on top of her already insane quirk and skill set, she's suddenly a massive danger. More dangerous than many villains he's faced before. And that's just great writing, honestly. Deku then has to hide himself in a full-powered smokescreen to protect himself from her, which in turn earns him a scolding from the sixth user, who tells him that by staying in the smoke and keeping everything in one place, now she knows he's there for sure, and eventually when he does come out, he'll just straight up get shot dead. And I gotta say, it'd be pretty helpful having all these users being able to give him feedback in real time and help him strategize. And I also like that the show's taking its time to point out that Deku's not some infallible super genius. He's a good strategist, but he's not unbeatable. He won't always make the right choice. He won't always do the right thing. And that adds a bit of depth. Makes it seem like the villain actually has a chance, and helps you sort of suspend your disbelief and engage with the episode a bit more. But anyway, Deku has a plan regardless of her strengths, And he starts trying to use the third user's quirk, Far-Jin, which is a quirk that lets him build up kinetic energy and release it in a burst, which is what he's trying to do here, even though the third user is kind of wary, as Deku's never used it before, and this is life or death. And on top of that, he's using a lot of quirks at once, and he doesn't have parallel processing for his multiple quirks yet. He probably only can do that for Black Whip and Super Strength, and maybe Danger Sense and Float, but not the others yet, especially Far-Jin. Because like I said, he's never used it before, so he doesn't know what kind of strain it's going to have, how much focus he'll have to give it. And I really love this part, because it means that he can't just spam too hard and become too OP and use all his quirks at once. So it's nice that they're setting some early limits, because ultimately it also means that when he does manage to use all of his quirks at once in an inevitable final clash, or at least use them in close succession, it'll seem more epic and more impressive, because we'll have seen the struggle. It'll be a proper feat that he has to work up to. Like the first time that we saw him use One for All without shattering his bones to do so. Anyway, the battle goes on, and Deku uses Black Whip to toss out various different items of clothing as decoys before he uses Far-Jin to speed himself up to grab her. And I gotta say, the sequence where it shows how he does all that in slow motion, that was really cool. I do love that sort of stuff. It really adds to the experience. Like when you're watching a sports game and you get the slow motion replay with the commentary analyzing every moment. That's what it feels like here. It's just very satisfying to get that analysis. And he even briefly succeeds in grabbing her, but she instantly swats him away. And then she shoots him up a bunch while she recounts her villain origin story, which, when you think about it, monologuing during the fight is a little bit silly, but whatever, it's an anime, I'll allow it. So yeah, we then see the pretty bleak origin story of Lady Nagant. She was basically the proto-Hawks. She worked for the Hero Safety Commission, but she seems to have had a much harder time of it than he did, and was forced to murder a whole bunch of people extrajudicially, merely to ensure the stability of Hero Society. But she seemed to have, a decent home life beforehand, and was trying to make positive changes. And so to her, killing all of these people to ensure that the public perception of heroes never falters, damaged her faith. Whereas for Hawks, his life sucked beforehand, and he saw the very worst of humanity. So I can understand why he didn't fall, so to speak. And yeah, this sequence, her killing all those people, actually very gruesome, very unexpectedly gruesome. And I'll tell you what, if there's any character that I've seen that seems to have a very completely understandable reason explaining their fall to villainy, it's her. She was turned into a killing machine when she was just a schoolgirl, and sent out to murder people, only for her to realize that what she was doing was wrong. To realize that she's just a puppet, a tool, and that the illusion is just that. It's an illusion. And so in a way, she becomes a bit like other villains like Stain and Shigaraki and Spinner. She realizes that it's all bullshit. Hero Society's false. But instead of hurting innocents like they did, she turns her gun on the head of the commission. But even then it feels like she was kind of provoked. I mean, she tried to resign and he tries to have her killed straight away. Although she does go on to apparently wipe out a bunch of the other commission top dogs, so that's one way of getting yourself a life sentence, I guess. But at the same time, it's not like she had much choice. The dude was drawing on her for trying to quit her job. She probably didn't have much choice but to kill him. The rest of the board, though? I don't know. They weren't even in the room, not sure they deserved to die. Especially since it seems like she would have had to hunt them down to do so. But yeah, regardless, she has one of the better origin stories. She isn't cartoonishly evil like some of the other villains we see, but instead she has a quite understandable and human reaction to having done terrible things that have left her traumatized. I mean, it's crazy how this character's been in 3 episodes? And she's become one of the best written villains in the show. Anyway, back to the fight. I found it quite amusing to see that even now, as he's getting shot up, Deku's trying to reason with her, to remind her that she was a hero, and that she's better than this. She doesn't have to stoop so low. And I'm really glad they didn't lean too hard on the whole edgy loner thing for Deku in this arc. Because a big part of what makes Deku great is that unshakable faith he has in other people. He's so infectiously idealistic. If he became jaded and cynical, a lot of what makes him great would have been lost. So I'm glad the temptation to make him a silent, brooding badass was successfully resisted. Anyway, she keeps kicking his ass and honestly, feels like if she wasn't monologuing, she would have beaten him by now. I mean, she has him on the ropes. Focus. Regardless, she makes it clear to Deku that even though she might not agree with All For One, in her eyes, a future where he's in charge of Japan is still better than the false hero society. And I'll just say this, press X to doubt on that one. But okay, guess she very much is jaded and cynical and kind of stupid and in denial. She's so set against the perceived falseness of hero society that she can't see just how bad a villain society would be. Deku then starts to power up and has apparently made some progress with parallel processing, as he realizes that he needs to narrow down the range of quirks he uses at any one time, otherwise it's like his body stalls and he becomes vulnerable. And so yeah, he still has those limits that he can't push through just yet, but through tactical reasoning, he can overcome them. And it does feel a bit sudden that he just overcomes them instantly now, but at the same time, it's not meant to be a long fight, so stretching it out would have been a big mistake, would have got boring. So whilst the development is a bit rushed, I don't think it bothers me too much. Anyway, in response to this, Lady Nagant lines up a shot on Overhaul, who's standing on a distant building, ranting about how she needs to take him to see his pops, just like they agreed. Pretty classic villain move, trying to kill the bystander. Also, you can distract and take out the hero. And ironically, this is how Overhaul ended up defeating Lemillion. They shot a quirk-destroying bullet at Eri, so Lemillion would have no choice but to intervene and lose his own quirk. And I really like that this calls back to that moment. Anyway, there's a brief flashback where he states his conditions for helping Nagant were simply for her to take him to see his pops. So yeah, that ain't happening, and it's so weird, because on one hand, the show does sort of get you to feel bad for him when you see him. I mean, he's got no arms, he looks depressed, he just rambles about his dad, but then at the same time, you also remember what an absolute piece of shit he is. And suddenly, you want a piano to drop on his head. He hasn't suffered nearly enough for what he's done, so I hope he never gets to go and see his pops. Anyway, she shoots one bullet at Overhaul and one at Deku, expecting that his concentration would have been thrown off completely, but no, like I said, Deku's managed to use his slimmed down parallel processing to combine a small number of his quirks, and so he's briefly able to use his Fajin combined with his superpower, combined with Black Whip to catapult himself to reach All Might levels of speed, as in prime All Might full speed, a faux 100%. And you know what? This is one of the most awesome things that he's ever done. It would have been 100% more cool though if All Might was there to see it, but still, it's still great. But it just would have been the cherry on top for me. So yeah, Nagant gets got and the battle's over, with Deku revealing that he's figured out that her heart wasn't really in it, and that she wasn't really on All For One's side all along. Otherwise, she would have just shot Deku in the spine straight up without warning, and there'd be nothing he could have done about it, because his danger sense wouldn't have picked it up in time. On top of that, the bullet that she shot at Overhaul was intentionally going to miss. So, what they're saying is that ultimately all of this entire battle, it was meaningless. The whole battle was literally just so Deku can show off his new quirk. There were never any stakes, because deep down, she wanted him to win. Oh, what? That's a bit of an anticlimax. And it really does make me question why this was the creative choice. Why make this decision? Oh well. Deku then tells her that she has the heart of a hero and begs her to join him, and you know what, I liked this, because it does set you up. It makes you buy into this idea that this super powerful character is about to join his squad, join his team. And then you think, oh, so this is what the episode's been about. She'll join them and redeem herself and they'll track down All For One together. But then psych, because that's not what happens. All For One remote detonates her, and she's only saved from becoming a splat on the pavement by the arrival of Hawks, who is in turn saved from becoming a splat on the pavement by Deku's Black Whip. After all, Hawks' wings aren't really healed yet. Meanwhile, Endeavor goes and captures Overhaul, and they all regroup on the ground. And I'll tell you what, if I was Deku, I think I'd be a little bit annoyed. I did all the work, defeated the villain, saved the day, and then the pros only turn up after everything's already gone down, and they don't have to do anything. They're just there for the cleanup. Another weird moment is that Lady Nagant is somehow still alive despite blowing up. I mean, look at the size of that explosion. Feels like bullshit. She exploded from the inside. You telling me she survived? She's looking like she's been cooked in the oven. She's still able to open her eyes and speak? Speak? And then she tells them, how conveniently, the info they need. Didn't like that bit. They all get back down to ground level after this, and Deku tells Overhaul that he'll get to see his pops when he's able to regret what he's done to Eri, but until then, no dice. And honestly, just toss this dude back into prison and never let him out. No deals, no mercy. He's actual trash. And yeah, Deku then reflects on what happened to Nagant, and he gets very angry at All For One. But yeah, I doubt that's going to turn into anything relevant anytime soon. It's just there to remind you that All For One is completely evil and he uses people and discards them. And that on top of that, it also clashes entirely with Deku's way of life. We then have a preview that gives nothing away really, which is pretty cool because usually they give you a bit of an idea or just completely spoil things. But here they just give you literally nothing. A couple of clips that don't seem related and very vague narration. But yeah, that's where we end the episode. A really good one. I enjoyed it, but there were just some decisions that I didn't like. But of course, with all that being said, those are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the episode? You like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.